Run It Studios is the home of the Run Radio podcast and runradio.net, a podcast and station about the relentless, resilient, and innovative types, inspiring strides in life, business, and beyond. Welcome back to the Run It Studios podcast. My name is Trina Wilcox, and my guest knows a thing or two about running things, which is what we talk about on the podcast, running things literally and metaphorically. We run all of these things in our lives. We even write it down many times, and that's something author Debra Yates is going to talk to us about, author of Woman of Many Names. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you, Trina.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Tell me a little bit about what sparked the idea to write this book.
It never sparked as a book in my mind's eye, anyways. I was going through a real hard time in life and didn't have a whole lot to do, and I'm sitting at the beach in St. Petersburg, Florida, on the beach and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I'd been married for 27 years, and my husband traded me in for a younger model. So um through that process, it just kind of broke me down, and I just didn't know what to do with my life at all. I had to walk away from my business of 18 years. I'm by trade a landscape design artist and installation person, and I just wasn't safe there anymore. She was not very nice and threatening to kill me, so I ran away, so to speak. Just made myself safe. So I knew about my grandmother Nani and quite a bit. Probably me and my family, my end of the family, more than anybody else, because I was the only one that was interested in our Native American heritage. And so my grandfather, just told me everything. And then when I would, want go see him again, I go, "Oh, tell me the story of Nani again. Please tell me the stories of Nani." And he would sit down and tell me stories and more stories, sometimes the same stories, but I didn't care. I just loved hearing him, speak about it. So I'm thinking, well, life's short, who knows what I'll, remember in 15 years or 20 years. So I decided to write it down, the stories that he told me and his brothers and sisters told me as well. I didn't research anything about her historically. I didn't really realize that she was famous, famous. I thought she was just famous to the Cherokee. I didn't know that, people knew about my grandmother. So, anyways, when I was finished with it, I gave it to my girlfriend because I hand wrote everything. And because I'm not computer savvy and I could use a typewriter, but who carries around a typewriter? And she handed it back to me, my writings back to me on a disc, and the tears start to come. And I grabbed her hand. I said, "Oh, honey, what's wrong? What's wrong?" She goes, "Deborah, I've always been the one that was going to write the book, but it's you." And I went, "It's me." And she goes, "This needs to be a book. People need to hear these stories." I said, "Well, I'm going to have to think about that." I said, I don't know how to write a book." She goes, "Just sit down and start writing, Deborah. Just expound on what you've already done here." And so I got a computer and started researching and, compiled everything that I could, chronologically in what I had written. And that's how Woman of Many Names became Woman of Many Names. And then I found my publicist, Bruce, and things just started clicking from there. And I've been doing this since 2016. And I'm just tickled to death to be able to talk about somebody that is historically means a lot and is very relevant today as she was back in the 17 and 1800s. She's still relevant. Her thought processes, her ideas, were about survival
Yeah.
and about peace and how we need to love each other. My grandmother walked the red path to war, and then through those experiences, she knew she needed to be a peacekeeper. And her uncles were the chiefs of in Cherokee tribe. One was out of Kula Kula, who was the peace chief, and the war chief was Oconostoa. And they had been schooling her throughout her whole life because her birth had been foretold in our prophecies. And they said that there'd be a girl child born of the Wolf Clan that would rise to lead her people to greatness. That was the prophecy that had been handed down for, many generations.
So, at what point did you realize that she wasn't just a big deal to the family, but a big deal to everyone around her?
In the researching of that book, I knew that there was one little sentence in my history book
Uh huh.
about Nanyahi and dragging canoe. And you know, that's really kind of hard to pinpoint, but really mostly after I started writing, and then I found out there was a association of the descendants of Nancy Ward, and it had about 500 members, and I've got probably Nanyahi living has 40,000 descendants alive, and that's, probably doubles every 10, 15, 20 years. And I know it's a lot more than that. That's just registered Native American Cherokees. I am part of the Western Band, and even though she was lived her whole life in the Tennessee, like between Chattanooga and Knoxville
Yeah.
on the slant. Yeah. So yeah, it was an amazing to realize that there was that much information out there. So I bought every book I could get my hands on that even had a sentence or a paragraph about her. And I read everything that I could find on the computer and, so on and so forth. I mean, I could still do more as well. And if I ever get around to finishing the other part of it, um, I will have to go back to you know,
You'll
uh,
have to go back to where? I'm sorry, it cut out.
Monticello.
Okay.
It's where President Jefferson is buried and his library and so on and so forth is. And she's there. I mean, she's referenced at least 6 times that I was able to find while I was there. And unfortunately, I had to go on to Boston from there. So I didn't get to stay as long as I wanted. So I need to go back there with all of the names all there's so many
Sure.
names and titles that she's listed under, and that's how the book, got its name was
Mhm.
I was talking to a friend. I said, "Man, that woman has so many names." I said, "She had more names than what I did." And so that's how, and then I went, "A woman of many names." Yeah, bingo.
Yeah.
That's the title. So yeah, it's amazing what you can find if you look hard enough. Daniel Boone referenced her. I believe the only woman he ever referenced besides Rebecca and his children, female children, was my grandmother. And he said she was the most handsome woman he ever saw. And and the Cherokee people called him Wide Mouth
Oh.
because this crazy man would go through the mountains singing at the top of his lungs. Well, they thought he was touched. I mean, who goes through enemy territory singing at the top of their lungs? Danny Boone. So, anyways, they called him White Mouth. They thought he was touched, so they left him alone. They didn't bother him. And so she knew of Daniel Boone long before she ever negotiated the sale of Kentucky through Daniel Boone for the Transylvania Company. And she took money for their tribe and goods, and he took land. And unfortunately, right after America became America, they took the land away from Daniel Boone. They eminent domained it, and it made him really mad. And I don't blame him. It would have made me mad too. And so at that juncture, he got mad and he says, "I'm moving away." So he moved to Arkansas. So that's how he ended up out there.
So, in all of your research, what surprised you most, just overall, not necessarily about her, but just what kind of took you by surprise as you were digging in?
Well, I guess that, you have to realize that in the 1700s, white women, colonialists, colonists from whatever country you're from, we weren't really listened to that much. And that her counsel was sought out by Thomas Jefferson. So let's just use that example for, and that he would parlay between Nancy Ward and George Washington. I thought that was kind of revolutionary for the time for people to listen to a woman. So I find that the most.
When you're going through all this, I always have this fear that I'm missing something or I'm going to get it wrong. Were you ever nervous that you were misinterpreting any of the information or that you were going to mix something up? And
Well, sure. I consulted a few attorneys because there is a danger of that. But Cherokee Nation hasn't come down on me, so I think I'm okay. Um, and the answer is yes. What's that big? The Smithsonian uh, called me and said, Daniel Boone, I mean, not Daniel Boone, but George Washington did not know Nancy Ward. I said, oh, how do you know that? How do you know that? My family's been saying for hundreds of years she did. How do you know that she didn't?
Mhm.
Well, it's not documented anywhere. I said, well, how about this? The letter that she wrote to George Washington was found in the 1960s in Thomas Jefferson's desk. It had either he hid it in that desk or it got shoved back in behind the drawer, but they found this letter from Nancy to George Washington and trying to basically keep her lands. And because she was promised after her service to our country that her town of refuge, Chota, would be held forever in America for her family. And see, that's really what she was about. She was about peace, yes, but mostly she was about her family and her family having a place in this country forever. And they did not live up to that. It was, of course, seized. Chota was seized. And however, recently, in the last, I think it was like 4 years ago, Chota was given back to the Eastern Band Cherokee, which is not where she would have ended up. Of course, her people were captured and taken off to the Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears. A lot of them, most of our family were voluntary evacuation. We removed ourselves
Mm.
because of, I believe, because of her prophecy. She had the gift of sight, and she just had a knowing about her that everybody knew that she was a seer.
Mhm.
She would paint the dots,
Yeah.
which means seer. And so our family, heeded her advice, once we seen what was coming, and a lot of them just like said, okay, we're out of here. And they went to mostly Texas and Arkansas.
Mhm.
Um, and then later, a lot of them did move up to where the rest of the family was in Oklahoma. Uh, and you know, the Trail of Tears evoked so many emotions for people, and it was an extremely unfortunate and sad time in American history. There is nobody left alive that did this, of course. And, and I hear anger, so much anger, so many times. And when people talk about it, and I personally, it makes me ill to even step foot on the Trail of Tears. My body knows, and I don't know how it happens or why it happens like that, but my body knows when it's on the trail, and I literally get sick. And my one cousin, she was like, right. because I told her for years, I said, no, I can't go on the trail with you, honey. That's one adventure you're going to have to do alone. So twice she put me on the trail unbeknownst to me,
Mhm.
and I got sick. And the second time it happened, she went, oh my, she says, I'm so sorry. She says, I guess I kind of tricked you. I said, what do you mean tricked me? She goes, well, those 2 times that you got sick earlier today, we were on the Trail of Tears. I said, oh. I said, I told you it makes me
Told
sick.
you.
She goes, yes, it does. And I somehow or another, our bodies have a link to that. And they know that a conquered people, their DNA changes, literally, their DNA changes within, the generations of being conquered be- because of depression. That depression is passed from generation to generation. I can see it all over my family. We all almost all carry chronic depression, and it's genetic. And I believe that's what happened to our people. And we fall into addiction very easily for that reason, and a few others. That alcohol was introduced so late in our culture. The Europeans and stuff, they've been drinking forever. We didn't drink. We smoked. You know, we did the peace pipe. We smoked herbs to get, pleasure, not alcohol. So when it was introduced so late into our culture, it wiped so many of the people out.
Hmm.
It's insane how many Native Americans of all tribes
Yeah.
died of drug addiction, alcohol addiction.
Oh, that's sad. Have you heard from any of the other members of the Cherokee Nation that have read the book, and what's their feedback for you?
I get the most wonderful feedback. Um, and they're on me to finish, the rest of her life. And yes, I believe that is important. But it's so well documented already.
Mhm.
And I wanted my book to be about my family, my grandmother, my grandfather, who is Kingfisher, not Bryant Ward. And Bryant was her, at least her second husband. And the um the relevance of that was I wanted him to have more acknowledgement in the history that played in Nancy Ward's life. So that's kind of how I set mine out. And I took it up to, of course, his death and her remarriage. And I thought that would be good enough. But they go, oh no, Deborah, nobody tells it like you do.
That has
And it
to
was,
feel good.
oh, it does, it does. And I have actually had very, very little negative feedback. Um, that and I recognize that, you know, she is a controversial figure in, especially in the Eastern Band. I had a very bad experience there. I was ignorant to the division between the two tribes.
Oh.
And as a younger person, I think I was like in mid 30s, I decided, well, I want to know, I want to join the Cherokee Nation. So we went on vacation and we went down to South Carolina or North Carolina. We went to Cherokee, North Carolina, and for a vacation and for me to get the paperwork to sign up and all that stuff. So I took my notes and what I had in and to the center where you sign up. And the lady looked at me and she says, "You're not welcome here." I said, what do you mean?" She goes, "Well, you're related to that traitor for starters. And not only that, but you don't belong here. You're a Western band."
Ouch.
And I was devastated. I have been since the day I found out I was part Cherokee Indian. I knew, I think my soul knew that I was,
Right.
but my family did not recognize it because of the discrimination of the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. You know, when my mother finally did confess to me after I told her about this dream I'd had like 3 or 4 times, and she goes, "Oh, damn it, you're Cherokee Indian. And don't you tell the soul. You'll be discriminated against. People don't like Indians." And I'm going, okay, well, not me, boy. I went to school. I told everybody because I'm proud of it. And I didn't care. If you want to discriminate against me, go ahead. And people will say, "Oh, them dirty Indians." And I'm going, how could you say such a thing? How could you talk like that about people in this day and age? We know better. We taught the Europeans how to bathe. We bathed every day. We weren't sinky people, and we were healthier. My family lived to be in their 80s, their 90s, unless they got killed in battle. But we were long-lived people.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe part of that is because of our cleanliness. And we ate clean food. And, you know, drugs and alcohol, other than peyote or whatever, were not part of our culture. And then after it was introduced, it wiped out so many people. I mean, we lost minimum 12,000 Cherokee on the Trail of Tears alone, but we've lost way more than that to alcohol addiction, to drug addiction, to depression, to suicide. Unbeknownst, like, if you see these things that the red hand across the face, why do people like to kidnap Native American women? Why do they do? What would cause people to do such a thing? It still just blows my mind. But there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about the Trail of Tears. So why be mad, angry? Solves nothing. We're not. There's nobody left to punish. And everybody's talking about reparations. Well, if they start throwing money at us, will I take it? Yeah, and I'll do good with it.
So when you
I
were
won't.
at that center and she said that to you, you said you're leaving devastated. What did you know where to go next?
Yeah, we left. We had planned on staying the whole week in Cherokee at the hotel there, the casino. We went home and we went back to the hotel and checked out and went other places. I was just devastated. When I got home, took a box and I threw everything I had Native American in it, put it in the closet, and just didn't even think about it for over a decade. I still wore my beautiful necklace and
Mm.
my ring here that was a ring that used to belong to Nancy that my grandfather had turned into a cuff when I was 12 and gave to me. And one night I was trying to figure out what to do with it, and I was just, kind of holding it in my hand and, moving it around. And what am I going to do with this, Lord? I have to do something with this ring. It's historical. It's too small for me. I can't wear that cuff. It won't even go over my wrist anymore. And before I knew it, I had molded it into a ring.
Ah,
It was like my brain went to another plane and did this.
yeah.
But when I speak for Nancy, I always have this arrowhead on and this stone that belonged to her.
So you've got the original book. Are there already consecutive ones out there, or are you working on them?
I have the starts of 5 other books that have sat in the closet. Um, COVID messed my life up like it did everybody else's. And you would have thought that would have been a perfect time to do that. But my mother broke down
Yeah.
and I had to move. And it seems like since I made that move, I can't concentrate
Yeah.
very good. I believe I'm going to have to go back to the Okohe River and rent a cabin and lock myself in it for probably a month, and
Yeah.
I'll come out with it. It will come. It started, but writing is one of those things, especially when you didn't know you
Yeah.
were one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a landscaper, I'm a construction girl. I like playing in the dirt and being outside, and I think I discovered when I found the gravesite, I didn't know that she had a park and she was buried there. And when I did find that out and went there, as I'm ascending the hill where she's buried on top of, it's like click, 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 click. Things start falling in place for me walking up that hill, and I'm going, oh my gosh, my life makes sense. Now I know why I was driven to do so many of the things that I did. It's just something that's set seed deep in your heart. DNA, call it what you must. And I knew, I knew I'd been trained uh, through her, even though she died in 1822. I know that she influenced my life. And had, I went into, like I said, into the landscaping industry. I worked for a very large garden center, one of the largest in Ohio. And I went to the library before I started work because I had no plant experience,
Yeah.
none. And he hired me to, you know, be and do something that I'd never done before. So I went there and I got all these books and I read all these books on plants and trees and yada yada and tried to memorize as many plants and trees as I could. And within a week, I was garden center manager. And my boss walks up to me and he says, how is it you learned so much about plants? Where did you get your education from? I said, the library. He said, the library. I said, yeah, last week I went to the library and got all kinds of books on plants and stuff and just read them. He says, I've never seen anything like you, Deborah. And I said, okay. And I made him a very rich man because I have this innate ability to sell stuff, go figure. But I just immersed myself in the plant world and the tree world and was never happier with the job that I had. And when I decided to go on and create and have my own business, it was like I put one ad in the paper and it sustained me for 15 years. So I was happy about
Good. It seems like it's timing for you. So when the time is right and those others pour out of you, you'll have to come back and tell us about those
it. I
too.
will.
All
I,
right.
I would.
Tell people where they can go to learn more about you and your find your book.
You can go anywhere and get the book. You can order it on Amazon. You can go to www.woman of many names and order straight from the publisher. Um, Books a Million,
Sounds great.
anywhere.
Well,
Woman of
thank you
many names.
so much for spending time and sharing with us and letting us in on this little piece of history you found.
Thank you. I appreciate it. She needs to be recognized, and the book's been turned into a screenplay, and it needs to
Oh,
be a movie or a miniseries or something. Um, Kids need somebody that existed and really, really did stuff. Um, Pocahontas, which would be another one of my relatives from my Nancy's father was a Powhatan. And but Nancy's significance meant more. She saved so many settler lives that we'll never know how many thousands of people are here today because she warned their town or their village that her uncle and her cousin were on their way and her son to wipe them out. So I believe that she had a part to play in
mhm.
history. Dragging Canoe had his part to play in history, as well as Oconostua and Attakulikula. And I believe they all knew what each other was doing. That's the only reason she was allowed to live. If the war chief thought that she truly betrayed them by her actions, or her warrior cousin dragon canoe, they would have killed.
Well, keep
They'd
the
have killed her.
stories alive and keep
I
sharing.
will.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks
so
so much.
much.
You can find out
Appreciate it.
more anytime, watch and listen on any platform when you link over from runitstudios.com. We'll see you next time.